Our next speaker is going to be Robert Sandefur. Robert is one of our lead developers, and Robert is going to be talking about SQL, the first of several SQL topics here. Kind of a fun diversion for the classic FileMaker crowd. So.
When we think of SQL queries, simplicity is not a descriptor that typically comes to mind. But then again, simplicity is not necessarily a descriptor that we place on our own systems either. FileMaker by itself natively lets us perform select style queries, meaning we can use the native tools in FileMaker to retrieve information. So what can we do with this that we cannot already do with FileMaker? So here we have a very simple contact manager. It's a very simple task, and that is to tell us what other contacts in this database are in the same city as this particular contact. In this screenshot, we're running this from the context of the company on one of the employee records. We can see that this company record has 4 of the 8 contacts joined to it with the employee table. Now, when we find ourselves needing information that is not readily available, typically what it means is we're going to have to leave this context, go to the proper context, perform a find, compile our information, return to the original context, and present our results to the user. 20-step script doing that exact thing. Alternately, we can add schema. We can open up the database relationship graph and put another table occurrence in there that gives us this information. But how appropriate is that approach, really? How much is the customer going to use this new request? And this type of an approach is eventually going to bloat your system and is really not a preferred way to go about retrieving the information. Here, I have a 5-line script. This is a quarter the size of the original script. It does the exact same thing. With SQL queries as an alternative in scripting, we can perform a find, retrieve the information without ever even leaving our context. Considering the use of SQL queries as an alternative to schema changes, we're basically building a relationship on the fly, which is something FileMaker just can't natively do by itself. Obviously, the results that we get back are not in traditional FileMaker form, as it's not presented as a record or a list of records, but there's tricks that we can do. We can use virtual lists, we can use repeating fields, button bars, what have you. And in a couple of cases with our customers, we are using SQL queries to retrieve information, then turning around and using SQL queries to blast the results of this information into another table in virtual list style form, but we're actually creating records. So the data that's in there is stored and not unstored, referenced from variables. And then when we're done with it, we just blast it away. We just delete it. So this brings me to my next topic, creating, updating, and deleting. FileMaker natively does not let us do this, but we can find plugins and other means that we can use to do these types of things to FileMaker databases. CNS query is my long-standing preference for this. In this example, this is a scripted delete. This delete can be run from any context on a record in any other given context without ever leaving where we are. We don't even have to be related to the record that we are deleting. And here we can see with just one single line here, we're deleting that record. And then additionally, we're logging that delete to a log table. Very short script, very powerful. For this example, what we want to do is make sure that whenever a company record gets triggered, its employee records are also triggered. But there could be too many different places that this is occurring in the system to accommodate that with just script triggers alone. So in this example, I've actually put a SQL query in the field definition of the trigger for the company. This query triggers the child records as well. And I will demonstrate this. So here we have a simple contact manager. In the footer here I have the company trigger field. When I update it, the employee records also get triggered. And I will show there is nothing up my sleeve. There are no triggers here whatsoever. That is all being performed from the Auto Enter Calc. So when you find yourself having to go to this layout, this layout, this layout, this layout, and add the exact same script trigger to the exact same field, are you going to get them all? You going to find them all? Well, this way you can cover them all and never have to worry about it. So in conclusion, a word of warning. Poorly written SQL queries can cause serious performance problems, but well-written and well-placed queries can dramatically simplify your system.
Thanks, Robert. Any questions?
Yes?
So I was brought up in the Church of SQL, so thank you, brother. When you're doing this on your own, it's complicated enough to type the select statements. Are you actually going in and manually putting in your slashes, or do you have a tool like I'm already thinking of building my own tool to take my select statement and just insert those for me to format it so it's FileMaker legible?
I type them. I just type them.
Okay, well, you're a better man than I am.
I've been doing it long enough that I type them. I like the extended keyboard. That's helpful.
Yeah. And then you also had a variable I noticed that had $, underscore. Is that, if that's part of your naming convention, what is the significance of that?
I'm sorry, where was that?
There was a couple of them I saw where your variable was.
Was it the field definition?
We'd have to go. It was during the script. I don't recall.
It's probably like a D contact or something.
We definitely do use underscores as part of our naming conventions, though.
Yes.
Kind of harkens back to FileMaker's
Oh.
default sort order, where an underscore will push it to the top,
Right.
right? So we'll put keys and calculations and group them that way.
Excellent.
In the variable, I see what you're talking about, and it's basically the same thing. I just try to keep my variable names consistent with my my field names as well.
I see. Thank you.
All right. Thanks again, Robert.